Welcome to another insightful episode of Parent Entrepreneur Power. In this podcast, Mary Catherine Johnson and Evan Johnson highlight the successes and struggles of parents in business. They share how to be the example of success in entrepreneurship to foster the same in your child, and so much more. Are you ready to power up?
All right, welcome everybody to another incredible episode of Parent Entrepreneur Power. I'm here with my lovely co-host, Mary Catherine Johnson, or as I know her, Mom, as always. And we have an exciting guest here today, Robert Glazer. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
We like to start off by just making sure everybody's on the same page. So tell us, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, I have a couple different things that I do. My day job is, I just realized hold on one sec. It's going to be better. I just realized my camera was off center. My day job is I am founder and CEO of a global partner marketing firm agency called Acceleration Partners. And on the nights and weekends, I write. I've written some books, speak. I have something called Friday Forward, which is a newsletter that goes to a couple 100,000 people each week. I founded another business called Brand Cycle that we spun off, and it's run by a different team now. So I've had my hands in a lot of different businesses over the years.
Okay, that's impressive. And your kids, do you have any kids? And if so, how many and how old are they?
I have 3 kids, a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 12-year-old.
Oh, wow. Okay. So they're not like little kids then. They're teens.
No, they're they got big fast. I don't know. Every time I say those, it seems to move a couple years. But yes, I have teens.
I know what you mean. The one here. I mean,
Yeah.
I think when he was in middle school, I think he surpassed my height. I'm not small. I'm 5'8", 5'8.5". I mean, he shot past me and I started having to look up. That's when I knew, timeouts weren't going to work anymore. So
It's fair.
Yeah. Are your kids a part of your business at all?
My kids are not a part of my business. My main business, and it's not the type of business that kids can work in. So I don't know if I would have them involved in the business. I think I've seen a bunch of different things over the years that give me conflicting things on that, but they have been involved with some of my books and helping me send those, and we rent some property and things like that, and we talk about those things, and I'm always explaining marketing or economics, or just even when we buy a house and you see X price, it also has Y mortgage, and a lot of the things, the financial literacy that and how things work, that I wish I actually had understood at their age.
Okay.
yeah, that's a tough one. And I think there are different ways that when Evan and I talk about having our kids work in our business, there are very different ways that we look at that the majority of entrepreneurs look at it. Yeah, I'm not looking to build a business so that Evan can, come in under my wing and take it over one day and it lives beyond me and all that stuff. That's not my goal. I'm sure many people have that goal, and that's great, especially if their kids really want to do that same thing. But really, is there any way that you have seen in your business where your kids either have a propensity or they have an inclination of a particular skill or talent that they really enjoy, that you could actually help them develop that skill or flourish with that skill through some part of your business? Let's say if it's operations and they really like numbers, right? And they might want to keep some of the books, or if it's art and they love putting together images and making posts on social media and things like that, could they do something like that for your business as a client of theirs, let's say, rather than actually working for your business? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And it is, it's interesting. I think there's certainly some things, like my daughter's very good at designing things. We've hired her to create video for something we needed for an event, not in the business, that my wife and I needed, there was something where we need to create some sweatshirts. And I said, oh, she'd love to do that. She does that. Yeah, so it's interesting though. I think if a business, in the way I am involved in my business, and I don't like to be operationally, I'm not that operationally involved in the day-to-day and at the scale, it's just not easy for me it's not like a 20-person office and I walk in and give them a job to do. We've been remote for 10 years. It's not necessarily easy to insert them into a process. And then I think that puts a burden on someone else. So I have heard all different parts of the spectrum. I know people have worked with their kids or spouses and they have great relationships. I don't know. There's something to me always that just, I think it's better to keep those things separate. And so I've created other discussions and other opportunities for my kids. I don't like to ever, we are a performance marketing firm. I am a very meritocracy oriented person. And I think when the CEO or founder asks for and we have a full management team and we're a 240 person organization. So, if we needed someone to pick up books or clean something, we don't have those jobs, and you ask your 14-year-old come in, no one's going to blink. But otherwise, when you ask that person to be involved, I think it's messing up the organic flow of no one's going to feel comfortable saying no to that. And I've always, my sister actually worked with me before, but I specifically didn't have her work for me and in the business. And then she ended up helping us spin off that other business. I really tried to keep church and state separate on those things.
Yes, I get it.
It seems like the bigger the company, the more
harder, yeah,
more difficult it is to include.
If it was a 10-person company and we're all in an office, my kids are packing boxes on the weekend, but we're meritocracy and people have ownership, and so it gets messy. I think there's some businesses where the owner has said, hey, this is my business. I get all the profit. What's mine is mine. And so no one cares what the kids do because it doesn't impact them in any way. We are a client services marketing agency. Like there's not a lot of good, it'd be very different if we were like a food distribution business. And again, they were in there helping on the weekend with inventory. We don't have those sort of roles. We are a highly specialized workforce.
Yeah, no, I get it completely. I hear you. So a couple of different things, like with Evan and myself, that's how he started. I asked him if he wanted to edit my podcast and earn some extra money because I couldn't do it myself anymore, right? I had grown beyond that and I needed someone to do it for me. He said, yeah, sure. He learned it. Now he does it for other people. He also coaches, blah, blah, blah. So with that, obviously that's the organization that you have. Especially merit-based, like you're talking about, is not possible. You don't want to have nepotism and all these kinds of things break down the community that you have, that is your business, that is your system. How are you then helping your kids understand at a very simple level, as it would have been when you first started your business, not what it is now? How are you helping them understand whether or not entrepreneurship is something they want, and the amount of work and satisfaction and all those things that goes into it?
Well, they probably see both. They see the rewards and they see the long work. And I in some ways, I think an entrepreneurship is a blessing or a curse that you are born with, but you can become better at it, like anything. Like, look, you can become a better hitter, but some people just have incredible hand-eye coordination that no matter how many hours of coaching I had, I would never have, right? So some people have the temperament, the risk appetite, and they can learn those things. To me, great entrepreneurs solve problems. And that's the skill that we probably work on the most. Like, hey, here's the problem. What's the logical solution to this? My daughter had one last night, got stuck in a garage, didn't have her ticket. Like, it's like, all right, well, because if you want to be an entrepreneur, like, there's no day that's going to be the same. The assembly line is going to break every day. So you need to become a problem solver. So I think problem solving and marketing are two core fundamental tenets of entrepreneurship. Like, then eventually you need to learn finance and also just understanding the basics of how to make money and profit and all that stuff. So I think we tend to focus on those building blocks than more the thing. And what I would love one day is to be in a position to invest in, whatever they're doing. But again, not, hey, I'm going to give you the money. Like, hey, I'll be the investor. And as you have skin in the game, I'll have skin in the game. That's really how I could see myself wanting to be involved in what's important to them. So I think, again, understanding business, like, we might be I would say, like, deconstruct the value chain, like in exercise, like you're an ice cream store. Oh, how how do you think they get the milk in here? Or how do the cows in? Where does it come from? Or just like thinking that way, I think opens up people's eyes to new ways of doing things. And that's really what entrepreneurs do, right? They find a new way of solving something that someone else hasn't done before.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So are your kids, so they're not like, are they all still like, they're still in school, I assume.
Yeah.
And do any of them show, like, do they want to become entrepreneurs, or are they planning on doing the college route first?
It remains to be seen. I don't know that any of them are so passionate that I think my oldest wants to go to school and is a voracious learner and comfortable that way. I don't know, by the time we get to the third, he's my very extroverted kid that likes to do things his own way. So he may be starting a business before then. But I think I don't think the starting your own business and the education are mutually exclusive. So I think, also just like, look, if you have something, look, Babson, I used to have interns from Babson College, which is right near me in Wellesley. I think it's the most entrepreneurial college in the country. These kids are like in college dealing with like shareholder lawsuits and fundraising and all this stuff. And I'm thinking like, why don't you just enjoy college? There's time for this, afterwards. Again, all this unsexy stuff. So I actually think that if there's something you are that passionate about that early, then jump into it. If you're just dying to be an entrepreneur and you don't know what that idea is, I think getting exposed to different things, education, going to work for a company with a great, whether it's a sales training program or a marketing training program or a leading training program, like make the mistakes and learn on someone else's dime in knowing that you're like me, like probably I was not going to be able to work for people forever, but I didn't have the idea. I didn't have the thing I wanted to solve, a breakthrough. Like, and if I had kind of just not given up on the education, all that stuff without having something to dive into, I'm not sure it would have been a good result. So that was the one thing I would tell them, is that you have to be so passionate about what you do, because it is going to have, if you're just doing it to make money, that's different than, having all these failures and near-death experiences that you got to get through and keep going. It's not, I like to say that entrepreneurship is sexy only in the rearview mirror. I think that people looking in on it, or they see a business sold and they're like, I remember a story of someone telling me he and his wife came from selling the business after 15 years and finally having financial freedom. And she said, the last time I was in that lawyer's office was when we were almost declaring for personal bankruptcy 5 years ago. Right? That's just the stuff that people don't see. They only, they see the win. They see when the equity pays off. They don't see the capital calls. So you have, so I said almost like I'm not sure whether you choose it or it chooses you, because I'm not sure, for most people, it not very enjoyable based on their DNA.
Yeah. And that's the whole point of it, right? I mean, if you're not passionate about something like you just talked about, you're not going to make it through all those things. And
yeah, there's some people who just love money and making money.
Yeah.
And you could do that. You can get into a sales system. You can get into affiliate thing. Like, that's very different than building a whole business, that has a purpose. I think, again, there's some people who are just really good at making money and want to make money. So.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give parents out there that are not at your level of business and don't have the team and the system set up that you do, but are solopreneurs or maybe have a real small team, and their kids are coming up and they're seeing different, talents or predispositions that they might want to help their kids maximize through their business, so that they can model and foster entrepreneurship and help their kids decide if this is an avenue they want to take? Is there any particular piece of advice you'd give?
I think I just believe in the same thing about opening the hood. So like, and then probably the Socratic method of asking questions of, we're at dinner night. Oh, what happened today? Well, I had this issue. Like, this client, signed a 2-year contract and for one of their business lines, and they asked to get out of it, but we have the opportunity on another one. So I can hold them to the contract. And then maybe I don't get this other, and it's an interesting discussion, right? It's hey, so what would you do? Or, we had this happen today. So I think that, like I said, like breaking down the supply chain, like opening up the hood, looking under it, getting intellectual curiosity under that, understanding those decisions. And then maybe I'd say, that's really fun. I want to do that. Or like, hell no, I want to go work on an assembly line. Like I want I want to just do I want to just do something that's simple and repetitive and use my money to go do stuff that's fun. Like, I think there's people that do that. But to me, it's just a more, you can dumb down any issue to a kid. Like, you have a bad day because your client fired you. Like, all right, well, here's what happened. Like, we didn't follow up with them and we made a mistake, and it brings these more adult concepts for discussion and understanding what it actually looks like under the hood. And I think there's so many. One family I know that has like 4 entrepreneurs, the father and the 3 kids. He just did this all day with them. Like, it was like, here's the problem, what's the solution? Or here's how do you get out of jail with a spoon, a jar, and a whatever? Like, he just constantly like giving them these scenarios of like, what would you do in this situation? How do you solve it? And they have incredibly entrepreneurial kids. So I'm generalizing, but I think that entrepreneurs see problems as things to be solved. And inherently, I think you, except for the rare engineering business or whatever, you learn to be a marketer, right? You have to sell yourself and your business. So you learn that skill.
It's really cool that it sounds like you're very open about what your kids want and what they might want, as opposed to many people I hear say like, oh, they have to go to college, or or I don't want them to go to college, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. They won't they'll try to force their kids into something. And so it's cool to hear that you're very open on helping your kids kind of find whatever path works best for them.
Yeah, I think they're basic standards, that we have and expectations, but also clear too about, the what it takes. I've had success. Like I do stuff, and my daughter will be like, "Oh, what'd you buy?" And I'm like, "Well, I worked hard. I bought it." Like I try to be pretty clear too around like, hey, these are, you don't have to want these things but here's what these things cost. My parenting mantra is you can be whatever you desire as long as you're willing to do but what's required. So I'm never going to tell my kids they can't do anything. I think that's demoralizing. But I'm going to say, if you want to get into Harvard, here's what it requires. If you want to be an astronaut, here it is what it requires. And I'm not going to do the work for you, and I'm not going to want it for you. So sure, you can get into Harvard, but you need to have a 1600. And so you need to have, these grades, and you need to have these things. And if that's what you want, then I'll try to help you get there. But again, I'm not going to force my desires onto them.
Not only that, it sounds like you also help them see what kind of work it takes. Like you talk about meritocracy. I mean, this is, you merit the work you put in, gives you certain results and gives you certain benefits. And as long as we see those two things clearly, instead of just going, oh, well, sure, I'll give you this. And, then there's no merit at all.
My kids make fun of me because so I'm an optimizer, and I've got into biking recently. And so the problem with that is that I need the right bike for the right scenario. So I have been on a little bit of a Craigslist bike buying binge the last couple of years. That's fun for me. I find one on Craigslist. I like the sport of it. I bike. Why do you know? I'm like, I was like, I worked hard. I can afford them. Like, it's fun for me. Like it is what it is. Like, yeah. So I think, they see the pros. I mean, you're going to see the pros and the cons of any scenario. I think my daughter's always trying to I'm pretty open with all financial stuff about what things cost or whatever, other than I had a discussion with all my friends this weekend over what age the kids try to find out, what you make. I mean, that's just not something we haven't discussed that because I just don't think they could fully understand it or need to know it or otherwise, but they understand what our house costs, and we talk through stuff. My daughter's tried to solve it through algebra, because at one point I told her we wanted to dedicate a certain amount to charity each year. And then I realized she was trying to get me to ask how much we had given to charity last year. And she was trying to solve it that way. So, but she's resourceful. But I think it's important for them to understand what things cost, or what, our neighborhood or houses or cars. I remember a story. We were having a party for my son, and when we were having his bar mitzvah, I said to him something like, it's kind of like having a BMW and driving it off a cliff. And he was like, well, that's, what did he say? Something like, he's like, well, that's not that bad. And I was like, what do you mean? And I was like, how much do you think a BMW costs? And he's like, $3,000. So it's interesting. Like, you know, then we got a whole order of magnitude discussion of this is what cars cost. This is what, so I think it's important that they understand like what things cost. Again, I think there's something about sharing income and, you know, and that, but, you know, they understand that stuff. My daughter spends a ton of time on Zillow and is always like, oh, look, our house went up this month. She's only 17-year-old. I know like Zillow so much. I mean, maybe she'll be into real estate. I have a real estate bug. We have a real estate bug in my family, but you know, we bought a rental place and we talked to him about, hey, well, here's, you know, what you pay for it. You borrow this amount and then you rent it for this amount. And just, I think understanding those basic financials just help you, and anyone can benefit from that financial literacy. Why can't I say literacy?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Totally. What is it? So that's interesting when you talk about not wanting or not discussing exactly what you make with your kids. What's the premise behind that? Why would that be a bad thing, or why would that have any positive or negative connotations to it?
Yeah, I just don't know whether they even understand what that means or the emotional context, or whether something comes up with a friend and it's just not, I don't know. I sort of talking to a lot of friends, that's where they've drawn the line. You know, it's interesting. I was with a couple friends in the last couple of doctors and realizing like they go through all of medical school and everything. And they're now they're at the point where they're running practices and dealing with, they're never taught anything about business or, you know, buying a practice and they're dealing with all of these problems, and they all had to learn it on the fly. They were never taught any of it, which is fascinating to me. Like, take something like orthodontics, where you're probably, you know, there's an exact supply of graduates every year in retirement. So you're probably going to graduate and then buy into a practice and then buy out someone over 5 years and then move out. Like, they are literally never taught how to do that, even though that's going to 90% be their outcome. There's not even one class on understanding the economics of that, which is really interesting to me, because generally the first time you do things, you don't do them very well.
No, you're going to make lots of mistakes.
Yeah.
And it's not like you can just trust the doctor who's selling his or her practice to just take care of you completely and have your benefit in mind rather than his or her own.
Right. And yeah, how do you structure it? Is it better to use debt or equity? You know, things like, oh, should the person hang around for 5 years? Do you change the brand? You know, my friend was telling me that he, you know, so let's say it was, Smith practice, and then Gordon came in, you know, so it went from Smith practice to Smith Gordon, and then 2 years later they flipped it to Gordon Smith, and then they dropped Smith, right? So it was like a very slow branding change so that people would get used to it. Again, this is all on the fly stuff. So I think the more of these real world scenarios that I walk through with my kids around business and problems that, I mean, one of the things I think in a fast growing business is just the problems are all different and new every day, and they require judgment. And I think that's a skill set that they can take in whatever they do. Again, if you go into medicine, you might be the person managing and rolling up practices. If you go into law, you might be the managing partner. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I think that's really interesting. I never really thought of, or it never really came up in our household with either withholding or sharing income, and especially at a younger age. I mean, I probably wouldn't even talk about that. I think Evan and I recently had a conversation about that, and he's in his 20s. So, you know, I probably wouldn't have a conversation like that with a 16-year-old or a 15-year-old, just because, again, like you say, the context is missing. They really don't understand what that means.
Right. But what different is now, other than your income, it might be the last great thing. Everything else is free, is out there. So again, with Zillow, I got to talk to my kids about what our house is worth. Otherwise, they go on Zillow and they're like, "What is $600,000?" Right. So it's out there, right? You can't lie about it, so you might as well explain it.
And why would you? Yeah, why would you want to lie? Yeah.
But as a kid, I had no idea how much our house was worth. But you know, Zillow makes it fairly clear.
Very easy if you're interested. Yeah. Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, I said I have one kid. I don't know what's good, better, or worse. That she's more on Zillow than Instagram. I don't know which one I would like more.
I think I prefer Zillow personally. Yeah, she's gonna, at least there's something she can do with that
There's
rather than
something
just,
and something in real estate that she's drawn to. So yeah, that's good.
yeah, whether it's the pricing or the style of house or the area or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. And living in California, I can tell you and I know this is across the country right now at the time of this recording, real estate prices are going absolutely insane.
Oh yeah, anywhere. It's crazy.
Insane. I mean, really insane. I would definitely not pay for my house what I could get for it.
I wouldn't pay for anything. That I wouldn't pay for college. I couldn't get into my college. I wouldn't buy my house. Yeah, I wouldn't rent my rental. All of those things.
Yeah, isn't it crazy? What the heck? Yeah. Oh well. Anyway.
Well, it
Anything
definitely
else?
sounds. Well, I was just gonna say, it really sounds like, Robert, you've really kind of set up your kids with an entrepreneurial mindset. Even though you haven't had them be like a part of your business, having the kind of conversations you've had around, you know, money and cost and investing and things like that, I think is really like set them up to think about that, because most parents don't have those kinds of conversations, and public school doesn't have those kinds of conversations.
No.
So that's very cool to hear, because I do not meet very many young people who think about those kinds of things.
Our town, I give them credit. Our town had this big project in 6th grade where they had to come up with a business, build all the costs, unit costs, like cost of goods sold, marketing. Like, it was a really cool project where they had to do all of this. And like I said, I think there isn't a field that you go into that I think you don't need basic financial literacy and leadership. And again, because whatever it is, if you move up higher into it, again, doctor, I was away with doctor, and he was talking about, practices and private equity firms buying practices, and then the doctors owning their own equipment and then sending patients that, like, it was all business stuff at some point. So it was fascinating.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's what makes the world go round.
Yeah.
So
it's never bad to have financial literacy.
Yeah, it really isn't. I mean, very few people I know have actual financial literacy. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I always ask this question. I think, like, if anyone, I think 2 out of 100 people could answer what is a car lease, like what actually determines a car lease payment. It's just, when you have everyone leasing their cars, and like very few people could say, oh, it's the amount of the depreciation between the beginning and the end plus a finance rate. They don't even know what they're paying for.
Yeah, I'm looking at leasing a car right now. The difference between leasing and buying, just looking at why I want to do one or the other.
And it's not that right. It's right. It's not that it's right or wrong in certain information,
No.
but if you don't even understand, if you just say, oh, well, that payment is cheaper, then you're not really understanding the dynamics of what the lease is, and how it works. Maybe that car doesn't depreciate as much, right?
That's it. And what you're going to pay for at the end of that lease, if you want to actually own that car, or if you want to trade it in and go get the next lease or the next purchase. I mean, understanding that process is vital for any kind of decision like that you're going to make. That's like buying a house and not understanding what it is you're buying. And we just refinanced we just refinanced our house. So going through the whole refinance process, what you still have to go through the title and the whole underwriting and all those things. And how does that all work with it?
And you understand you understand, oh, I owe the mortgages, the balance that I owe plus the interest broken up into pieces, so that's paid off in 30 years. Like, in theory, at least you hopefully understand what that
basics.
is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But then what are you going to do with difference between a second mortgage or a line of credit? And how do those two things work? Right. I mean, and the same, like Evan, he understands what it takes to put down a deposit for an apartment, and what the lease is for the apartment, how long he has to pay it, what about utilities, all those kinds of things. Because he went through that process and is financially literate for it. But most of us don't get that. I moved out of the house, had no clue when I moved out of my parents' house, what that meant, how it worked, renting first and last, deposits, all that. I had no clue at the age of 18.
Yeah. It's cash flow. I mean, even if it's a deposit, you get it back, but it's cash flow, right? Yeah.
And also, what if I damage the apartment in some way? I won't get that deposit back. Right.
Exactly.
Crazy.
So as we, begin to wind down the conversation, we like to ask a bit of a doozy of a question. If you were to die tomorrow, what kind of entrepreneurial legacy would you leave for your kids to use as an example as they grow into potentially entrepreneurs themselves?
I mean, I hope it's for my kids or employees, I hope it's a leadership legacy, right? I hope I helped build leaders for tomorrow, both within my organization and within my family. So whatever way that they were going to create and contribute, that they were able to lead and have the choice to do their own thing if they wanted to, and have that skill set and capacity.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a really good answer.
Yes.
Hopefully I'll make it through though.
Before that day comes, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Robert,
It's gonna come for all of us. So
Yeah, none of us. It's really amazing how
Yeah.
many people really try and get out of this whole thing, but they're not getting out. We all go to the same place.
not getting out alive.
Nope.
All right.
Well, Robert, thank you so much for coming on the show. For people who are interested in you and what you do, where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, they can find out. Everything is all at Robert Glazer, GLAZER.com.
Okay.
And I suggest you sign up for that Friday newsletter. It's really incredible. That's the first thing since our first conversation. I've been getting your Friday newsletter, and it's amazing. So I highly recommend it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
So much, Robert, for coming on the show.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Parent Entrepreneur Power. Hopefully you came away with valuable tools you can use in your business, life, and relationship with your kids. If you want to hear more about our mission, or if you want more insights into cultivating your parent entrepreneur power, join our movement to make entrepreneurship more accessible to parents and their kids at parententrepreneurpower.com.